So originally we were going to look at 1 Samuel 5 and 6, but there's really such a few of you in here. We're going to back up a little bit, all right? And we're going to look at, and I actually had wrestled with this throughout this week on should I stick with just 1 Samuel 5 and 6, or should I be piecing it out, breaking it down a little bit more, right? And I think we'll break it down a little bit more. So if you remember, a couple weeks ago, we've been talking about kind of Samuel and Samuel's life and Eli and Eli's family. And last week, we kind of talked about the death of Eli's sons, right? Because Israelites, they were going to go stand up against the Philistines because they felt like they were being bullied. And I often will say, well, are you being bullied, or are they telling you what you're doing is bad and they're putting you in your place, right? Because I have kids who do that all the time, where they'll tell somebody that you have a stupid face, and then the other people will be like, oh, what did you say? And then they're like, they're bullying me. It's like, that's what Israel kind of did, right? They were getting punished by God, and the Philistines were the way God was punishing them, right? And so they try to stand up against the Philistines. It doesn't work. They bring the Ark of the Covenant in because they figure wherever the Ark goes, God goes, and God surely won't let us lose this battle. And so they're trying to force God's hand, and they're trying to use it like a relic, really, and they're trusting in the Ark instead of in God. And all that happened. And because of that, Phinehas and the other son die. They die in that battle because they were kind of the ones who were like, yeah, let's take the Ark, right? As we go on in chapter 4, Eli gets this news that this happened, and the news that his sons have died kind of sends Eli over the edge, and he also perishes. And then in the last section of chapter 4, one of the children, Phinehas' wife, is having a child, starting in verse 19 of 4. Now his daughter-in-law, Phinehas' wife, was with child, due to be delivered. And when she heard the news that the ark of God was captured, and that her father-in-law and her husband were dead, she bowed herself and gave birth, for labor pains came upon her. And about the time of her death, the woman who stood by her said to her, do not fear, for you have borne a son. But she did not answer, nor did she regard it. Then she named the child Ichabod, saying, the glory of God has departed from Israel, because the ark of God had been captured, and because of her father-in-law and her husband. And she said, the glory has departed from Israel, for the ark of God has been captured. Again, and we're going to see this next week some as well. One of the questions comes, where are we putting our trust? Right? In her mind, the glory of God has gone out because the ark has been captured. Last I checked, their relationship was not with the ark. Right? The relationship was with God. That would be like saying, heaven forbid, the parsonage burned down. Right? The parsonage burned down. Therefore, Sarah and I don't have a marriage anymore. Well, that's not how that works. I'm sorry. That's not how that works at all. Right? It's not based on where you get together and meet with them. Right? If the church burned down today, we would meet in each other's houses until the insurance took care of building a new building. Right? It wouldn't be as nice as this building, I can tell you that. They don't make stone like this anymore. But we would continue to meet. The glory of God doesn't go out just because this happened. Right? And she's looking at that and she's saying, look, my father-in-law is dead, my husband's dead, and the Ark of the Covenant is gone. Right? Her trust wasn't in God himself. And to some extent, she says, look, the glory of God has gone out because of this. Well, if the glory of God had left Israel, it is not because the Ark of the Covenant had left. It's not because her husband died. It's not because her father-in-law died. Right? Because if you think about it, her father-in-law was the judge. He was the guy in charge. He was the big kahuna. He was also the high priest. Right? And so you could go, well, the priest is gone. Well, I hope when I die or retire, our church doesn't go, well, the glory of God has left our church because Pastor Gary's not here anymore, right? We don't do that. We don't say that the pastor's the glory. That's not the case. The glory of God goes out because, well, you know what? We told it to. That's the reality. When God says, hey, here's what I want you to do, and you say, yeah, I don't want to do that. When God says, here's what I don't want you to do, and you go, yeah, but that's what I'm going to do. Right? It's those things that lead to, that's the right word, lead, there's an A, not an end. Right? Anybody else think by the actual, like I think typing in my head, like words type out, right? So, leads to, right? It's those things that lead to the glory of God going out. Isaiah says that our sins, our iniquities, separate us from God. Right? It puts up a barrier between us and God. We don't fight very often, but when Sarah and I do fight, there's generally a small period of time where, you know what? She goes that way and I go that way. And I think that's the normal case, and I actually think it's somewhat healthy to get some room so I can go. And then, of course, every time it happens, they have to go back and go, I'm sorry. I'm a stupid idiot. All right? I wasn't understanding what you were saying very well. Right? And she'll come back and she'll go, I'm sorry, I was just hungry. Or I was just overtired. Because that's generally her problem. She's not wrong, she's just overtired and hungry, so a little harsher in the way she's dealing with correcting my stupidity. Right? But sin separates us from God. And now we have to pair that again with what we see in Romans, right? Nothing separates us from the love of God, right? Just because there is a separation between us and God doesn't mean God's love is not there anymore. Just like when Sarah and I have those occasional spats, we don't stop loving each other. I don't go off into the other room and go, man, I don't love that woman anymore. And she doesn't go, I hope she doesn't go into the other room and go, man, I don't love that man anymore. I'm pretty sure she doesn't, because she still tells me I'm a handsome man, and you'd have to love me to be able to say that. So, but nothing separates us from the love of God. But our sin does put that wall up. It says, nope, you're over there and I'm over here. Right? It's a conscious choice. And Israel at this point really had made that choice. And God they've already been in this state of separation. Right? They've already been in this, God has kind of left them alone. And he said, look, you guys want to keep doing what you're doing, I'm going to let you be for a little while. Right? Samuel coming, and this is part of the irony. Here she's saying, well, the glory of God has come out, and God has sent Samuel in there. And they know that Samuel is prophesying. He's speaking the words of the God. And so really the glory of God is coming back at this time when she's saying, well, it's left. Right? And so here we are. When we put our trust in things that aren't God, when we allow those things to take our vision, we don't see when God comes. Right? If we're putting our trust in all these other things, we don't see when God's here. Right? We look around and we see that there's not many people in the congregation today. And for a lot of us, that's disheartening, right? I think for all of us it's disheartening, except for Daniel, who's back there laying, right? He doesn't get disheartened. Daniel's just that kid. He's always full of hope, right? But the reality is, the glory of God is not found in how many people we have sitting in the pews. It's not found in how many people who are able to make it here every Sunday. glory of God is found in our own relationship with God. The glory of God is found in the Word of God that He's given us. The glory of God is found in our praise and our own worship. When we sing those songs, even when we sing them off key or off tempo, because I can't keep a beat, which drives people crazy. At least the people who are counting at the piano. Right? That's where the glory of God is. It's in the worship of Him, in that relationship of Him. And so if we allow other things to distract us from that, we aren't going to see when it comes in, or when it's really there, right? I had a young girl this week. She was frustrated, and her mother was the counselor, and so she would talk to her mother about it at night after the Vespers evening worship, after the campfire, which really was an extension of our evening worship, because somebody designed it that way like 20 years ago. That was me. I did it. But after all that, she would cry, and she'd tell him how I don't ever feel the presence of God. I don't see God the way other people do. And I eventually had to say something to the effect of, the way people describe the presence of God is different for everybody. And some people never feel it, right? Some of us, because we have no feelings, and so I know it's there. I have a friend who has passed away now, but he was an elderly gentleman, and he had a son who was a state trooper who had gotten shot in the line of duty and killed. Not son, grandson. And when his grandson was killed, they asked, well, don't you feel the love of God just lifting you up? And he looked at him and he's like, no, I don't feel the love of God lifting me up, right? I don't feel that. I feel the pain of my grandson being shot and taken from us. But, he said, but I know the love of God is there, right? We don't always feel it. We don't always sense it, but we know it's there, right? And so it is our responsibility to be looking to where the glory of God really is, and to recognize it when it's there, to recognize it for what it truly is. It's not the building, it's not the people, it's the relationship with Him, right? That's the glory. Because I can tell you something. If the rest of the world were to die today and it was just me and Sarah, I would still love Sarah the way I did yesterday, right? My same thing with God. If everything else were to go away, I'm going to love God the same way I did yesterday. Right? That's where the glory is. It's in that relationship, that recognition of that love. And so I don't have an ending for this sermon because this is all right on the spot. So it's important for us to recognize where we're putting our trust. And we're going to talk more about that next week. But when our eyes are focused in the right place, that's when we start seeing God. And we see Him in the little things. We see Him in everything. So will you bow with me in prayer?